news at the start of the new week. Coming up next, we speak on Fria. This is Our Time with Mikhail Baranov in the CDN. Hello. 2 people were killed as a result of a Russian shelling of Nikopol in the Dnipropetrovsk region. According to local rescuers, the victims of the strike were a 76-year-old woman and a 51-year-old man. 2 more people were injured in the Russian army's attack. A fire broke out at the site of the strike. Apartment buildings, shops, and a hair salon were damaged. Firefighters have already extinguished the blaze. 3 people were killed and 15 more were injured, including 4 children. The Russian army attacked residents of the Kharkiv region with missiles. In Balakliia, 3 residential buildings were destroyed by the strike and 10 more were damaged. The private sector was also affected, with about 1,000 windows shattered. All relevant emergency services are working at the scene, clearing the debris.
Preliminary reports indicate 2 Iskander missiles were used, one of which was a cluster munition. As a result, 1 man died from a head wound that was incompatible with life. In other words, the enemy deliberately targeted a residential neighborhood in the settlement. There are no military facilities, military units, bases, or even any enterprises here, not even civilian ones. This is purely a civilian area.
1 person was injured as a result of the nighttime attack on the Odesa region. The Russians launched a massive drone strike on the region. Explosions rang out in several cities. According to the regional military administration, energy and port infrastructure were damaged, as well as several civilian vessels. On the Romanian bank of the Danube, an evacuation was announced due to Russia's nighttime attack on Ukraine. People are being evacuated from the village of Pleru, which is located across from the Ukrainian city of Izmail. It was the port in this very city that the Russians attacked. As a result of the strike, a fire broke out on a liquefied gas tanker. The Romanian National News Agency published a video of the burning vessel. Meanwhile, the country's emergency services announced that there is a high risk of explosion within a 5-kilometer radius around Pleru, and the area must be evacuated immediately. Up to 20 people were also evacuated from the neighboring village of Chadokoi, according to local authorities. In total, on the night before Monday, Russia launched 2 Iskander ballistic missiles and 128 attack drones at Ukraine. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, Ukrainian air defense neutralized 91 Russian drones in the north, south, and east of the country. There were hits from 30 drones and 2 missiles at 17 locations. Over the past day, the Russian army assaulted the positions of Ukraine's defense forces along the entire front line 216 times. This was reported by the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Most often, the occupiers attacked in the Pokrovsk direction, 75 times. The enemy was also active in the Konstantinovka sector of the front. There, 32 battles were recorded. Another 23 times, the Russians tried to push back Ukrainian defenders in the Lyman direction. 21 assaults were stopped in the Alexandrovka bridgehead and 14 in the Hulyapolis sector. The total losses of the Russian occupiers have already exceeded 1,159,000 people. Of these, 1,160 were eliminated in the past 24 hours, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In addition, according to their data, the Russians lost 2 more tanks, 3 armored fighting vehicles, and 17 artillery systems the day before. Also destroyed were 2 air defense systems, a multiple launch rocket system, more than 200 drones, and over 70 vehicles. Ukrainian intelligence operatives hit Russian air defense systems in the Donetsk region. This was reported by the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine, which also published footage of the precise work of the air defense fighters from the special unit Primara. Intelligence officials stated that over the past 2 weeks in Ukrainian Donbass, drone operators destroyed a Tor M1 surface-to-air missile system, command posts from the S-400 complex, as well as a radar station from the Buk M3 complex. Tough sanctions against any country doing business with Russia were announced by U.S. President Donald Trump. During a conversation with journalists, he confirmed that the Republicans are working on a legislative initiative to increase economic pressure on the Russian Federation through its trading partners. According to the American president, he personally proposed this idea. The Republicans are preparing a very tough law, and I'm fine with that. It's about sanctions and so on. They might add Iran to it as well. I suggested that. So any country doing business with Russia will be subjected to very tough sanctions. There's been a new act of sabotage in Poland. Prime Minister Donald Tusk reported that a railway leading to the Ukrainian border has been damaged. An investigation into the incident is already underway. And in neighboring Lithuania, which regularly faces Russian cyber attacks, they've decided to act proactively. The country is setting up dozens of cybersecurity centers. Europe is strengthening its defenses in all directions, preparing for possible aggression from Russia. The European Commission is warning about a potential strike against NATO. There may be only a few years left. Nikita Skoblikov will continue on this topic.
In 2 to 4 years, the head of the Kremlin could give the order to attack NATO. This prediction was made by European Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius at a conference in Vilnius. He stated that the most likely targets for the Russian dictator are the Baltic states. Currently, German and American troops are stationed in Lithuania on a rotational basis. But according to the European Commissioner, the presence of a battalion of Ukrainian forces there would be an additional guarantee of security for the country. We need to work together to strengthen our defense and develop such important projects together with Ukraine. Why do we need to create the Eastern Guard together with Ukraine? Because only in this way can we learn from Ukraine not just about drone production, but also about building an entire defense system. Because wars are won precisely thanks to defense systems, not just technologies or drones. And secondly, if the border countries start creating the Eastern Guard together with Ukraine, this knowledge about modern warfare will begin to spread to other regions of the European Union. So far, Russia does not dare to launch an open attack. It is ramping up its hybrid aggression against Europe. Espionage, flights of so-called unidentified UAVs over the territories of European countries, cyber attacks. All of this has already become a familiar backdrop. The countries that border Russia feel the threat especially acutely and are therefore accelerating the strengthening of their borders. Lithuania is among the first. The country is preparing to deploy dozens of cybersecurity centers across its territory. On Monday, the Ministry of Defense presented plans to establish 44 cybersecurity operations centers throughout the country as part of a large-scale effort to strengthen Lithuania's digital defense. Rokas Jonikis, director of the Cybersecurity Operations Department at the National Cybersecurity Center, stated in May that the goal is to establish regional centers in every county within 3.5 years. From a publication by the Lithuanian national broadcaster. Today, Europe has to fend off not only Moscow's digital attacks. EU and NATO countries are increasingly recording actual acts of sabotage. Poland, which regularly accuses the Kremlin of organizing such operations and detains those involved, has reported a new incident. On a railway line leading to the Ukrainian border, unknown individuals damaged the tracks. We're at the site of the explosion, not far from Garwolin, near the Mika station. Most likely, the explosion was intended to derail a train on the Warsaw-Dublin line. Unfortunately, there is no doubt that we're dealing with an act of sabotage. Fortunately, there was no tragedy, but the situation is extremely serious. Police, prosecutors, and experts are working at the scene. They're investigating all the details of this case. Unfortunately, as we now know, a similar incident could have happened southeast of this location. It is openly said that Russia is waging a hybrid war with Europe in various countries. Many European countries are facing incursions by Russian drones, as well as fighter jets. As the president of Finland noted, the line between peace and war has become quite blurred. Russia is waging not only a physical war against Ukraine, but also a hybrid war in Europe. The boundary between war and peace is blurred. Russia is trying to destabilize Europe. sow chaos and panic using arson, vandalism, and propaganda. Alexander Stubb, the president of Finland, gave an interview to the press. The only leader in Europe who openly disagrees with his colleagues' assessments regarding the threat from Russia is Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. In a podcast with German bloggers, he stated that the fear of a possible Russian attack on the EU or NATO is laughable, since Russia is supposedly too weak for new aggression. Analysts are convinced that Orban is just pretending not to notice the danger. In reality, he continues to play into the Kremlin's hands and adapt to Putin.
Orban, of course, understands the level of threats, But right now, he wants to do everything possible to prevent Europe from rising up and drawing the right conclusions from the situation. He sees that Russia now, well, is directly threatening Europe more openly. Like, they're sending drones all over Europe and the most strategic locations to show that it's possible and that it will keep happening. In other words, Orban now wants to hand out some gifts to all 5 of the Kremlin's 5th columns in Europe.
Analysts note that Orban's attempts to lull Europe into complacency aren't working. On the contrary, countries are strengthening their coordination. Denmark has announced its participation in the NATO High Visibility Project, which aims to standardize 155mm artillery shells. The country's defense minister, Troels Lund Poulsen, has already signed a declaration of intent together with alliance partners.
Ukraine and France have signed a historic agreement on a decade-long strategic partnership. The document provides for the delivery of Rafale multi-role fighter jets to Kyiv, as well as strengthening Ukraine's air defense. Fittingly, Presidents Volodymyr Zelensky and Emmanuel Macron signed the agreement on the runway of the Villa-Kublai Air Base near Paris, where the Ukrainian leader arrived today for a visit. At the joint press conference, Zelensky shared some details of this agreement.
Ukraine will be able to receive 100 Rafale F-4 aircraft, very powerful French radars, 8 SAMP-T air defense systems, and 6 launchers. And while these may seem like technical details to some, for us they are important. Every launcher means protection for people's lives. This is very important and necessary for our defense, missiles and guided bombs. I want to emphasize the importance of this agreement. This is a strategic agreement that will be in effect for 10 years, starting next year. We understand all the foundations of this agreement, political, financial, and industrial. And this is a historic agreement. It is very valuable that France has taken such a step toward achieving real, guaranteed security in Europe.
For his part, Emmanuel Macron emphasized that the new generation SAMP-slot systems with improved capabilities are currently in the development stage. And according to the agreements, Ukraine will be the first among all customer countries to receive them. The French leader also noted that the deliveries are planned both for the next 2 years and for the next 10 years.
We need to strengthen the Ukrainian army so that it itself becomes a deterrent factor. France and the United Kingdom have shown leadership on this issue, but we encourage everyone. What is this model for training and strengthening the Ukrainian military? This will be a collective reflection by the chiefs of staff of our countries. All coalition countries have joined the discussion. It is necessary to provide Kyiv with such weaponry that it would make Russia lose the desire to attack Ukraine. We believe that Ukraine is an important link in our defense and in our pursuit of peace.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.